It is Monday, my friends. That means it's time for a Q&A. So for those of you just joining us, all you have to do is leave your questions down below and hopefully they'll be answered on next week's show. So we're going to kick this week off with a question from the original Chef Boyardee, who says, Q&A, what about a second ODST game set during the post-war insurrection era? So I've actually said in the past, when it comes to the Halo games and the kind of enemies that you fight in them, I'm not a fan to the point that I am really against Halo having human enemies. I think that part of the selling point of Halo as a franchise is that you're not just fighting dudes. That's for other first-person shooters on the market. Halo's selling point is that you're fighting aliens. You're fighting interesting aliens of different builds and sizes, and they all react in really interesting ways. They've got their own weaponry and stuff. So the idea of Halo kind of devolving to just being you're fighting other humans now. No, I'm not a fan of that. I think that would be incredibly bad, and I think there's a reason 343 has not done that, because it wouldn't sell. It's not why a lot of casual people buy Halo. They like fighting the Covenant. But as far as a second ODST game, I've actually pitched in the past the idea of an ODST game set during the events of Halo 4. So, in general, I'm a little bit tired of the Reclaimer saga. I'm happy that it's kind of over and that we're moving on to something new with Halo Infinite. But how I would do an ODST 2 would actually be during the events of Halo 4, when the Infinity crash lands on Requiem. You're an ODST squad that gets stranded out in the jungle, and you're trying to regroup with the Infinity, and so fighting through the jungle thicket, it could probably be kind of the semi-open world hub. You could even maybe have the same story where you're trying to regroup with the other members of your squad, and you get kind of flashbacks, like traditional Halo flashback missions, just like ODST, that take place as like the chaos is ensuing. Groups lost in the jungles as the Prometheans are kind of coming out of the ground, or being deployed from the Didact's weird ship thing. It could be kind of interesting. You'd almost have this semi-horror-esque vibe to it, the idea of like your motion tracker going off and kind of panicking because the dots on them are moving way too quickly to be Covenant, and then just being swarmed by crawlers and having them tear apart a Marine as the others are screaming and running into the jungle and only getting lost further. It could be cool, it could be interesting, but that's just how I feel. So here's another question that is actually kind of relevant to the idea of Halo moving on from the Reclaimer saga. So Donger Lord says, Q&A, 343 seems to want to phase out the old elements of Halo. And if I'm correct, they did say that they eventually want to get rid of Chief. My question is, do you think 343 will get rid of Chief? And if so, how do you believe it would be a good way to send him off without disappointing players heavily? Also, good luck on your health problems. Update on the health problems. Things are going well. Not ideal. I'm actually currently being treated. I have to take this powder thing that tastes a little bit like chicken, which is gross because I have to put it in water, so it just tastes like gross chicken broth. Like I'm drinking cold chicken. Ugh, no. I hate it so much, but I have to do this. So in regards to 343 wanting to phase out the old Halo, kill the Master Chief, make Halo unrecognizable, etc., etc., I do think a lot of fans forget the context of what Halo Infinite is. I don't think a lot of fans have been paying attention to some of the quotes coming out of 343 in regards to kind of their internal view on the series. 343 has been pretty candid with the mistakes that they've made. Bonnie Ross recently has a quote talking about, yes, they've made 2 mistakes in the past, but those mistakes were important in them learning and kind of honing in on exactly what fans view the spirit of Halo as. When us YouTubers go to 343 during PAX every September, we get a chance to talk to the developers there during the community days. And there is a massive cultural shift happening at 343. So when I see a lot of people say, like, they don't understand Halo, they just want to kill the Master Chief and stuff, remember, plans change, things change. Halo Infinite will not be a continuation of the things that you hated about Halo 4 and 5. It'll take what worked and throw out what didn't work, and hopefully make something that all fans are comfortable with, to an extent. I don't know, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about it. The quotes about Halo Infinite being a spiritual reboot of the series has me definitely excited. I don't think 343 wants to phase out the old elements of Halo. I mean, looking at that Halo Infinite trailer, they definitely are not phasing out any old elements. They seem to be actively embracing them, which is more than we can say for games kind of like Halo 5. And it has me happy. So __ says Q&A. Do you think that after Infinite, it would be prime time for Halo games to expand more towards the lesser known parts of the Halo universe? There could be many stories about the human insurrection, the interplanetary wars, and the Forerunner Flood War. There's so much lore in Halo novels that really a large portion of the fan base has yet to experience. And I believe that with the success of games like Halo Reach and ODST, there is room to have Halo games without Master Chief on the cover, as long as it's not handled like Halo 5. So I agree that there is plenty of room for spin-offs, and those spin-offs could explore interesting ideas. So within a spin-off setting that isn't part of the mainline stuff, you could explore some interesting parts of Halo's lore. Now, I do take a bit of an issue by saying that lesser known parts of the Halo universe, because things like the Forerunner Flood War, those were very well documented. We got an entire trilogy on them. And in some cases, the written literature doesn't necessarily need to be turned into a video game of its own. That trilogy isn't going anywhere. It doesn't suddenly become relevant if it's turned into a video game. For fans who do want to explore that part of Halo's universe, the books exist. They're right there. They're right there right now if you want to read them. I don't really think we have to kind of sit around and wait until now it's a video game. Now we can really dive in. Halo is a multimedia series, and the games are the games. The games are doing their gamey thing. But then you've got the books where you can explore these really interesting things in a way that a video game can't. And that's an incredible thing that Halo is multimedia. It can explore stories that the game sadly can't explore. As far as spin-off games though, I'd like to see some new stuff. I'd like to see some side stories. Maybe tales of what it must have been like on the Ark after the war, what it's kind of like working with Forerunner structures, working alongside the engineers to learn from the Forerunners and stuff like that. You know, once all the dust settled from the Human Covenant War, that stuff could be interesting, because what we did really dive into after the events of Halo 3 was the Cold War type stuff, where you've got different fringes of the Covenant that have refused to lay down their arms. And they insist that, no, they can continue it. We can make a new Covenant, make it better, stronger. And kind of like the tension building up that all kind of broke out with Halo 4 and then kind of, collapsed with Halo 5, where you've got the galaxy kind of consuming itself in this massive civil war that was, ironically, kind of brought on by the fall of truth. It just sent the galaxy into this mess. So I'd like to explore some of the more maybe peaceful stories in the Halo universe, the ones that are a little bit more positive. I don't know if that makes any sense. The next question comes from I1am2me3dp. Okay. Q&A. How would you recapture the magic of Forge World? 343 tried making large Forge maps that, at least on paper, should work great. But I feel like most still agree that Forge World was Forge maps at their peak. I've been fantasizing about a new Forge World that's like 8 times larger, with a taller ceiling, larger ocean, and maybe even an extensive cave system on the land portion. But that's just me. So this is actually something that I have thought about, because going through things like Alpine, Glacier, and stuff, Halo 5 has really incredible Forge maps there. I do think they're quite good. Alpine especially, I think it's one of the best Forge canvases we have. Well, you know what, Canvas, there's a pretty good place to start with this kind of dissection on maybe what it is that isn't resonating with certain fans. So, it's all subjective, ultimately, what you think is a really good Forge map. Because, for example, The reason that a lot of the post-launch Forge maps that were added to Halo 5, the reason that they were kind of so barren and identityless outside of a pretty skybox is because the Forgers requested that. So for them, something with pre-made terrain only gets in the way of their creativity. They want to make the map themselves from scratch. All they need is a pretty skybox, and even then, I bet a lot of Forgers would prefer an ability to make their own skyboxes. But when it comes to casual Forgers, and this is where I think kind of the disconnect is happening, so a lot of casual Forgers, they take a look at something like Alpine, and there's a lot there that you could do. You know, it's very open. You've got kind of like these interesting little creek beds, you've got these kind of rocks and cliffs. I've seen a lot of really fun D-Day type maps made with that beachhead. What I think is not working, and why it feels like certain maps like Alpine are not great compared to Forge World, is because ultimately the controls are incredibly complicated. The controls were fine-tuned for the expert Forgers. The expert Forgers will swear by the control change, and that it is quite a lot easier now for them to make precision edits and make their maps exactly perfect. I love Forge as well, so for me, I will swear up and down that Halo 5's control scheme for Forge is so much better than the one that we had before. But for some people, the beauty of Forge was not precision making these really complicated maps and kind of going bananas about details on them. For some of them, it was kind of like a fun little sandbox where they could throw objects around, save it as a map, and then have fun little custom games. Some people even just like screwing around in Forge, flinging each other with massive wall objects on Forge World, like the wall coliseum, having one person stand on one end and then have the monitor quickly rotate the wall so it acts as like a catapult and launches someone across Forge World. That's the kind of stuff that certain fans really like Forge for, and they sadly can't when Forge World is going, or when Forge is really going hard into this map editor type thing instead of, you know, the sandboxy thing that it used to be. I think ultimately the way that it could work in Halo Infinite, I understand that this is, you know, probably an expensive process. It would probably take a lot more man hours to do, but I do think it would be worth it in the end for the longevity of the Forge community. I think that there needs to be kind of like a training wheels mode, or not a training wheels because that's, you know, that implies that they're babies and they're not playing it correctly. Some kind of arcade mode for the controls where it heavily simplifies things. You know, it makes the controls a lot simpler, doesn't let you do some of the precision edits that you used to be able to do on Halo 5, and what it ultimately does is emulate the feel of Halo 3's Forge or Halo Reach's Forge, where it's very arcadey, it's very easy to pick up and kind of learn, just something like that so people can have fun. And I think ultimately that would help people connect more with some of these new maps like Alpine than the designs of them themselves, if that makes sense. That's at least my diagnosis on what the problem might be. You're free to disagree, and in fact, if you have a different theory, let me know in the comments section. So the final question comes from Kid in the Blue Hat, who says, Q&A, yo, love the channel, keep it up, hi mom. On the return of Johnson, what do you think about the idea of Oni having Johnson's DNA and maybe cloning him? A man as valuable as that going to waste? DNA immunity to Flood? Maybe they experiment with his Flood-resistant DNA. It seems like something that Oni would do. I'm sure that there could be a believable way to bring back our old favorite cigar chomping sergeant. Spartans never die. P.S. Hope you don't die from your pain. Get better soon. So it's funny. I don't think the cloning could work out. Cloning is almost like, okay, now Halo has kind of jumped the shark. I mean, Halo jumps the shark quite frequently. Most recently, Halo jumped the shark by turning Cortana into a robot dictator, so it's like you can't get much sillier than that. But As I was reading your comment about possible ways to bring Johnson back from the dead, I read the word clone, and then suddenly my brain yanked out a memory from a comment that I read a while ago and stupidly did not screenshot it, because it's an excellent question to answer. This subscriber posed the idea of, dudes, like, they make AIs based off of dead people. There's our way to get Johnson back, and better yet, we could have him on theoretically any mission we want, no matter how little sense it makes if the UNSC brings Sergeant Johnson back as an AI construct. And I'm like, yes, holy crap, that's an excellent idea. Guys, we fixed Halo. That's how you could bring Sergeant Johnson back from the dead. Have them make an AI that's modeled after him. That would be awesome, actually. You could even, if Halo Infinite carries over the Voices of War thing from Halo 5, you could have him set as your announcer. That would be so cool. Okay, like, I'm pretty happy right now. I mean, it's not gonna happen. I doubt that's what they will do. I sadly think Johnson is dead for good and we'll never get him back. But if they were to bring him back, that is such an excellent way to go about it. So ultimately, guys, that wraps this week up. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave more questions down below. And as always, I'll see you on the next video. Oh, also, let me know what you want the next video to be on. I'm working on a couple of them, but some of them are a little bit specific in that it's kind of things that I personally feel pretty passionate about, or things that I want to get off my chest, but I also know that some of the topics on them won't appeal to everybody, so I'd like to hear some of your suggestions on what you'd like to see. Okay guys, bye.